Welcome, everybody. This is Alan Todd from CorpU. We're excited to walk through the organization guidance system, and I'm really excited to have Dave Ulrich and his colleagues at RBL with us today. If you have questions, put them in the question box. So with our GoToWebinar, there's a meeting box to your right. You should see questions. So if you have questions for Dave as we're going through this, or anyone, please put those in. We'll get to them. We will be recording this. It's 30 minutes, so we're going to be cranking through. So the recording will be available tomorrow. So to keep things moving and get going, I'm really excited to have Dave here and to talk about the work he's doing. But just to put it in context, Dave has been. I don't think there is a human being in the world that has spent more time dreaming about the future of work or the future of learning or the future of HR than Dave Ulrich, I just without peer. And so whether he is named by Business Week as the leading business thinker and guru, or named the father of modern HR by numerous organizations from HR Magazine on down, the amount of work and thinking that you've put in, Dave, into leadership, organization, HR, talent, capability, and the amount of research that you've done, I just don't think there is a peer. So without further ado, I'm super excited for you, Dave, to take us through the organization guidance system, talk a little bit about the thinking behind it and where we're going. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dave.
You got it. And Alan's going to move the slide, so we'll go to slide 2. First of all, Alan, that was very kind. I'm going to change. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I am going to change expectations. I'm sitting in my office, so welcome to my office and what we see in my office. This is the paycheck I got for doing my dissertation 30 or 40 years ago, and you won't see the number. I spent 2 years on a dissertation on numerical taxonomy statistics, and I got paid for those 2 years of work $11.85. So just so the expectations are clear, I was working for food. Since that time, with Norm Smallwood and dozens of colleagues, we've written a lot of books. We are passionate about creating value, about doing things inside an organization in talent, leadership, organization, and HR that win. I like this slide too. You can see in my office, I have a picture of Dr. King. He says a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Albert Einstein says it. Winston Churchill says it. And I really like the Women's Tea Group says it. So we're coming out of an incredible 7 weeks, and my heart aches for all of you. I know many of you who've decided to join us. I just can't imagine the stress you've been under. I was talking to a company this morning in the United Kingdom. They're saying, we went through response. We're now in recovery. We've got to go to reimagination. This crisis is a unique opportunity. If you could go to slide 3. This crisis is really a unique chance to do something special. On the one hand, we return to normal. Jeff Pfeffer, one of the geniuses at Stanford, did a paper recently, and I've done papers where recidivism comes back. For those who know me, I've lost weight, I've gained weight, I've lost weight, I've gained weight. It is so hard to fundamentally change. But this crisis could be an inflection point. It's a chance where if we do things well, we can not just respond and recover, but reinvent and reimagine and create something new, not just because we declare it. In my passion, I want to create something that will help HR professionals build organizations that win. I want HR to be a successful partner in driving success. And the opportunities from this crisis are 3 on slide 3. We focus, we prioritize, we customize, we do speed. We got to move with aggressiveness. And again, my passion is we create value for those inside and outside the organization. By the way, this is not a new issue. If you could go to slide 4, I see a lot of firms sending out, oh, wow, we're responding to the crisis. Here's our latest and greatest tool. We've been working on this thing called guidance for about 15 months. And here's the logic. On this slide 4, you see career guidance. When I was early wed, I went to a career guidance counselor, and I said, I'm nervous, I get nervous, what am I going to do? And And he said, oh, there's no hope for you. He didn't say that, but he gave me counsel. I now give guidance to students, and I almost always start, what are you trying to accomplish? What do you do to get there? There's retirement guidance. One of the people on this call is named Sue. She wants to retire with $10 million in 2 years, which means she's going to have to become a criminal. That's the only way that that's going to happen. That was a joke for Sue. But if I have a number that's going to be my retirement, what do I have to do? On the bottom left, there's navigation guidance. Here's the question. How do we provide organizational guidance? You know, that is a very interesting issue. And if I go to slide 5, it begins to change some logic. A lot of times what I've done, and others in the writing and work, Sue, I'm really sorry. That was meant to keep you awake and perhaps angry with me. You don't have to become a criminal. On the left-hand side, here's what we've done to help our company succeed. We describe how we're doing. So I wrote a book called HR Scorecard with brilliant colleagues, Mark Huslett and Brian Becker. We have scorecards, we have dashboards, we have insights. These are mostly descriptions. I've been on the phone lately with 3 or 4 folks who've done a brilliant job in consulting, and they do or in culture change. They do a great job describing what my culture is. How do we make decisions? How do we manage information? Guidance is not there. For the student, guidance is not what class am I going to take? It's what class am I going to take to prescribe what I want to become. If I want to be a chef, here's the courses. If I want to be a professor, here's the courses. On the left-hand side, we often recognize here's the choices in HR. Here's a STAR model. Here's a 7S model. Here's a health index. Here's the choices we face. Guidance says it's not about the choices. It's about investing in the right choices. Which courses do I take? Where do I invest? On the left-hand side, we have intervention with data. Analytics, data are the hot things, scorecards, dashboards, insights, impact. On the right side, a guidance system says, can I act fast with solutions? Can I bring to bear all the technology-enabled work we do and quickly get solutions and get them cheaply? We don't need to go a 3-month process of data collection. Do it quickly, and the focus is on solution. And again, on the left-hand side in the HR field, for all of us who've been there, we often measure what we do. How many people go through training? How many people are hired? How many people had this experience? What we want to measure is the outcome from the training. Okay, that's the context. Now is the right time to begin to provide that guidance. Let me just stop. Alan, are you still on the able to talk? Is there anything, Alan, you'd add to that context? And then I'll take us through what we've done.
Well, the only thing, just as I think about it, is the idea that guidance informed by a deep and broad lake of data. So it's so important to have
nice.
To just have so much research underpinning what you do, so that when you start to apply machine learning algorithms and logic to inform future directions, the bigger that data set, the more accurate the guidance becomes. And so I've just add that data piece with how you and I've been talking.
I love it. I love it. And our partner Norm may get on the call. We're technology troglodytes, and Norm is on that list. And if he gets on, send me a note and we'll get him on. So we've given the context. Now is the time. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. As people begin to return to more normal, what can we do as an inflection point? And we've been working for a year on this guidance system. Now, let me go to slide 6 and where we focus. For those who I've worked with before or been a part of our work, we know that to win on slide 6, you've got to have financial ability, strategic ability, and technology. But we know that the organization makes a difference. We all know that. We've done research on it, and I'll share that in a minute. We have dissected that complex concept of organization into 4 pathways. Talent. Do we have the right competence? Workforce, people. Organization. Do we have the right capability? The workplace, the process. Leadership. The brand. Do we bring that together? And human resources as a function and as professionals, do we sustain that? Now, you can build your own pathways, but those are the 4 pathways over our career we've studied. The pathways that create organization that enable financial, strategic, and technological results. Slide 7. and Alan mentioned it. And if anybody would like, we've got 30 books with thousands of data points. And let me just highlight where this guidance comes from, this reservoir of data. In talent, we did some books on 13 dimensions of talent in 450 companies and the impact of that talent on business outcomes. In leadership brand, Norm and I have written half a dozen, actually a dozen books, 10 I think, and we did a study with Fortune magazine on top companies for leadership. We did 3 rounds with 500 companies of a round. What is it leaders and leadership does to make a difference in results? We've done the leadership code with 30,000 respondents. We've also done a book in articles, leadership brand, leadership capital index. Our focus on leadership is how does leadership create value for the company? In organization, this is where I started my world. We have studied organizations and redefined them, not as a morphology or structure, but a set of capabilities. We've got a dozen book on that logic, boundaryless organization, GE workout, the latest one, organization capability, the early one, learning organization, the latest one, reinventing the organization, victory through organization. In that research, we looked at 1,200 global organizations and how they delivered value by the organization they created. And with Norm and others, and with Alan and his team, we've done deep interventions. And finally, human resources, where I get labeled sometimes. Many of you have been a part of our 7-year study of HR competencies. We've got over 120,000 respondents, a dozen books defining HR. Let me just take a breath. We have reservoirs of data. And so when we began to work with Alan, we began to say, how do we turn all of that data into a guidance system? So it's not just a dashboard or a scorecard or an insight, it's guidance. And what I'd like to do is take you through an example. And let me go back and forth to Alan, because I think it really helps you get a context. Alan, anything else to add about 6 and 7, kind of the depth and breadth and logic behind the, there is great research behind what we're doing. Anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, Dave, and this is everything, right? If we think about building logic, it starts with, we have to be rooted in theory. We have to be grounded in evidence. And the more data we have, which Dave, you and Norm and your colleagues have been, I mean, just decades of doing this work. And I am absolutely convinced you don't sleep. You do this 24 hours a day. There's no way you can write so many books. I watch how prolific you are on LinkedIn, but it is that data, it's that research, it's being connected to different research organizations, both in the academic settings at Michigan with associations around leadership, HR, and organization. That data is so crucial for building the intelligence in a guidance system, right? So the more data we can feed it, the more accurate we can build algorithms for the future to start to narrow down. And so the more people that join the guidance system movement as well, and remember, for the people that are on this call, this has been private invite only. This is not something that we've made it public. This is for a private group of people to join us in helping to make that data set, that data lake, a little deeper, a little wider, which gives you a head start of getting ahead of everyone else in terms of when you get post-crisis and where you drive. The more data we have, the more accurate our guidance. Think of it as like Waze or Google Maps for driving organizational performance.
Alan, you've explained that so well. Let me tell you my bias. I found this 2 days ago when I'm doing webinars. This is my dissertation from 1982. And the title is The United States and Japanese Electronics Industries, Description, Taxonomy, and Selection. Taxonomy is the science of simplicity. I love data. And in fact, in just a quick anecdote, I created in that dissertation a very large and complex database, and it took an hour for the computer to run the statistics at UCLA. This was in 1982. I shut the computer down. Today, that would be run in seconds on your cell phone. How do we take on slide 7 all of this data that we've collected over decades and make it simple? And let me illustrate it. Let me go to slide 8. I'm going to look at leadership brand as an example. I'm going to walk through the example with numbers, and then Norm will walk through it, and then we'll talk about how we might be able to work together. Norm and I distilled thousands of studies on leadership brand into 6 steps of building better leadership. And you can see the 6 steps. Here's a traditional assessment. By the way, we've done them. I confess to that. That's the way we've done it. How well, column A, how well do we do each step? 0 to 10, 6, 4, 5, 8. Column B, what's the global norm? Now, we've done this in hundreds of companies, so we can give you, for example, row 1, do you clarify the case for business? We're a 6, and the global norm is 55. Row 2, define effective leaders. We're a 4, and we're at the 30th percentile. We're at the 30th percentile. Row 3, assess leaders. We're an 8, we're really good, and we're at the 90th percentile. What does that then lead to? Go with me to slide 9. That then says, where should I focus to do a better job in leadership? 1, I can fix my weaknesses, and look at what we've highlighted. Row 2, we were a 4, we're at the 30th percentile of everybody who does this. We better focus on that. Invest in leaders, we're a 5, and we're at the 40th percentile. Measure leaders, number 5, we're at a 4, and we're at the 60th percentile. Or on slide 10, build on my strengths. Assessing leaders, we're an 8. That's row 3, we're in the 90th percentile. That's the state of the art today. Let's measure where we are on any of those 4 pathways: talent, leadership, organization, HR. Let's look at the global norm and see where we focus, build on our weakness or build on our strengths. Here is the key slide, slide 11. Look at column A and column B. The yellow are the weaknesses, the orange are the strengths. Now let's change the metaphor to guidance. Let's change the metaphor to guidance. Remember, guidance, what do you want to be as a student? I want to be a chef. You focus on the outcome. We believe there's 4 outcomes we've measured in our work, and we've done this with HR, we've done it with organizations. For example, C, column C, I want to be better at employee engagement, employee commitment, employee sentiment, employee productivity. Here's the exercise. Which of those 6 leadership brand efforts will lead to the greatest progress? We do a statistics, we do regressions. Those who can follow, we're happy to share with you complicated statistics that are really actually quite elegant. 40% of the impact on employee outcomes will come from number 2. Notice some of the others in that column C, 10, 10, 10 at the bottom. We shouldn't invest in leadership programs or measuring impact or adoption, because those aren't going to have the impact. Column D, what does it take to build our strategy and deliver business results? Column E, I love column E. If customer success is our outcome, which of those 6 leadership agendas should we focus on? We clarify the case for business. Number 1, it has the most impact. This data is amazing because it begins to tell us not only how we're doing, column A, and we're going to give, by the way, what's cool about this, we're giving this away. Go with us to create this data system. You'll get A, where we are, you'll get B, the global norm, and you'll get the answers to C, D, E, and F. Where should I focus to win? And notice they add up to 100 points to keep it simple. That's where we're headed. Norm may want to talk about that chart with some details and then give an example of a company where he's worked with to go through that. But let me tell you, we could take, and I don't want to go back, on any of the pathways, talent, leadership, HR, organization, we have done this work and shown you where to focus to have the outcome you care about the most. Norm, are you able to check in? Can we hear you?
I hope so. If I talk and you can't hear me, then
I hear you.
We got you.
So,
Norm,
Norm, you may want to comment on slide 11 and then let Alan know when you want to move to the next slide.
Yeah, so thanks, Dave and Alan. This has been a great setup for the really practical pieces that we're showing here right now. What's really interesting about this slide on 11 is that what you can see as Dave went through it, if you assume that you should fix your weaknesses, you would have missed the impact on the customer and the investor. And if you had started with build on your strengths, you would have missed it too. So in either case, build on your strengths or fix your weaknesses, which are really the only 2 alternatives that you have when you're doing assessment data, you can really miss the the impact that comes from focusing on what's important and what really impacts both the internal and the external stakeholders. So Alan, let's go to, or Raf, who's ever did the slides, let's go to 12.
I got you.
And 12 is just a different pathway with a very similar impact. And the takeaway from this slide actually might be how patient our clients are with us as we go through these learning journeys about how to really get to results. But in this example, this is a large global pharma company, and a group of the previous leadership team had been removed by their board and really by investors after misconduct and ethical misconduct. And so a new group came in that we had worked with before and went through a different path, not the leadership pathway, but the org capability pathway. And the new CEO really felt that given all the ethical problems, what they really needed to do is to figure out what culture would really make a difference. And by culture, it was culture from the outside in. How do they really want to be known by their target customers, and how can employees resonate with them at every touch point? So in this pathway, we went through an audit that we have been charging for many years that identified that the two lowest capabilities compared to industry benchmarks were innovation and accountability. And so it was easy for the executive team to say, well, that must have been the cause of our the former ethical problems with most of the organization. So what we need to do is to really fix innovation and accountability, because if we do that, then we're going to have a new culture that would be that would really make a difference and not lead to the problems that they'd had in the past. So in this first round, they focused in a number of different ways on improving innovation and accountability, and really did improve how well they did innovation and accountability. But the impact of the improvement on their stakeholders was minimal. And so we had to then say, gee, I mean, obviously this was a lot of work and it really hasn't had much impact. So we went through to round two, if you can pull that up, and basically redid the capabilities audit with this org guidance lens on it. And so instead of just asking people to look at how well we did each of the capabilities, it really became a conversation about that and what was the impact of being better on them. And if we were better on them, what would that mean? Would they buy more from us? Would they trust us more? And basically really being able to shift from how well do we do something to what does it mean if we are better at something. And the aha moment for this group of senior executives was that although various stakeholders had similar views about the strength of the capabilities, most of them had very different views about the impact and importance and why any of them mattered. So the executive team, because they had the data, were now able to talk to the different stakeholder systems, investors, payers, patients, employees, and say, here's our logic for why we're going to be focusing on the patient ecosystem and what their needs are. And we assume that if we can really be perceived as having more patient centricity and understanding these patients and impact their journey in a different way than we have been, then the investors would follow that. And after just a year in that process, the impact is already more than the impact on the 3 years previous to that, with much higher satisfaction, greater pull demand from payers, because the payers will allow the purchase of drugs that their patients really want, and there's an influencing process that the company really was able to focus on and be able to do much better. And that allowed them to expand their portfolio both broader and into different countries, which led to higher investor confidence and higher market value as expressed in a higher price to earnings multiple. So similar kind of a case as the one Dave went through, but this was sort of with the example of a specific company and the impact that it had.
Great, thank you, Norm. That was great bringing that case study to life. And Raf, if I could have you talk a little bit about next steps for people and what they get when you do this. And I'll repeat what Dave said earlier. The ask here is participation. There's no cost. So this is a private closed guidance early adopter program, if you will. So Rafael Costa, are you there?
Thank you, Alan, and thanks everyone for participating. There will be 4 things that you will get. The first one will be upon completion of a first assessment that you do, you will get an immediate SWOT analysis as well as the comparison between business, functional, as well as an HR leader perspective. In addition to that, you're going to get, once each pathway is completed, and there are 4 pathways, once each pathway is completed and 100 participants have gone through it, you will get a personalized, company-specific report that will be tailored for you. Once that's done, in addition to that, you will also participate on a 1-hour briefing that Dave will synthesize the learnings from each pathway, and that will be an exclusive offer to you. And then the last thing you will also get, in addition to the immediate SWOT analysis, the specific company report, and a guided learning journey with Dave from a briefing perspective, you will also get books and materials that will help you augment and drive that specific pathway that you have completed. So go to rbl.ai, please.
All right, thank you, Raf, and thank you, Norm, and Dave. Thanks so much for putting all this together. And so everybody, each of these pathways, if you did each of these 4, I mean, you could think of them as each $50,000 consulting engagements. That's really the level of detail and the research that's gone behind that. And so we just want you to get your folks to get a team to get to rbl.ai and go down these pathways. Again, there's no charge, and then we'll work through some of the guided learning and the outcomes and the deliverables that you'll get. So thank you all for your time. Thanks again, Dave. Thanks again, Norm. Thanks, Raf. Thank you all. If you have any questions,
Alan,
please.
Alan, before you wrap up, because I noticed that I had Martin Luther King, and I have Martin Luther King in my background. When he gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, there were 4 phrases he repeated, and many of us are moved by his elegance, and I think they apply. Number 1, we will not be satisfied. We're not satisfied with dashboards and insights. We need guidance. Number 2, now is the time. Coming out of this coronavirus is a great time to reinvent, to have an inflection point. Number 3, he said, with this faith, join us in an act of faith. We're creating with you this system. And then number 4, go back and do. I hope you'll go back and do, to go to rbl.ai. So Alan, those are my comments from Dr. King that I think are powerful. Thank you.
Absolutely. A beautiful close, Dave. Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing that to a close. Everyone, thank you for your attendance. And if you have any questions, we will send you tomorrow a recording that you can share with your colleagues. We'll put it up on the website. But if you have any questions, you email them into CorpU or RBL folks. Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.